Hello, my name is Amelia Alfiero. I am a junior at Bloomsburg University, and this is my project in U.S. foreign policy on the U.S. rejoining the Paris Climate Agreement. The Paris Climate Agreement is a legally binding international treaty on climate change. It was adopted by 195 parties at the UN Climate Change Conference in Paris, France, on the 12th of December 2015. It officially started on the 4th of November 2016. Currently, as of the 27th of January 2026, there are 194 parties in the Paris Climate Agreement. On June 1st, 2017, President Trump withdrew the United States from the Paris Climate Agreement, citing unfair economic burdens. President Biden in 2021 rejoined the Paris Climate Agreement. However, in 2025, President Trump pulled the U.S. out of the climate agreement again. Its overarching goal is to hold the increase in global average temperature to well below 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels and pursue efforts to limit the temperature increase to 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. It is also to limit global warming, greenhouse gas emissions, and they must peak before 2025 at the latest and decline 43% by 2030. On day one, Trump declared a national energy emergency. It came despite the fact that U.S. had hit record production levels under the previous administration and was currently producing more oil than any other nation in history. The Trump administration has moved to maximize oil and gas development in Alaska, reversing Biden-era restrictions on the 23 million-acre National Petroleum Reserve, Alaska, and reopening the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge for drilling. Trump has also rolled back dozens of environmental rules, including national air quality standards for particulate matters, limits on wastewater discharges for oil and gas extraction facilities, and regulations on power plant emissions and vehicle pollution. He has also called wind turbines pathetic and so bad, and falsely claimed that they were killing people. He also frequently exerts that it is the most expensive form of energy, ignoring data showing it is significantly cheaper than fossil fuels in both manufacturing and electricity generation. He has also slashed $22 billion in clean energy products that have been canceled, and wind power investment has shrunk to its lowest level in a decade. In the early months of 2025, tens of thousands of federal workers were abruptly fired from agencies such as the U.S. Agency for International Development, the EPA, the National Science Foundation, the Forest Service, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, and others. Many of these employees were engaged in vital climate research and conservation work. The conflict between the U.S. and Israel and Iran, which began on February 28th, has effectively stalled flows through the Strait of Hormuz. That is a passageway for about a fifth of global oil consumption. Production shut-ins and attacks on energy infrastructure have also cut deeply into the output. The International Energy Agency projected that the war had shrunk the oil supply by around 11 million barrels per day as of the end of March. Analysts warn that projected deficits could steepen depending on how long disruptions through the Strait of Hormuz persist. While the instability of Iran-US ceasefire negotiations makes oil prices rapidly change from day to day, it is said that the war has boosted oil prices by about 50%. If history is any guide, the country that dominates energy usually dominates economics and politics. Last year, the world's biggest carbon emitter, China, registered a very slight decline in greenhouse gas output. Many analysts believe that this means the country's carbon use will peak this year or very soon. If confirmed, this will be a moment of greater significance than Donald Trump's decision to withdraw from UN negotiations on climate. While China's overall GDP expansion is slowing, the speed of clean tech investment remains breathtakingly fast. Last year, the amount of wind and solar construction was doubled from the rest of the world combined, helping China to reach an installed capacity of 1,200 gigawatts, 6 years ahead of the government schedule. Last year, for the first time, the top 4 wind turbine makers in the world were all Chinese. China is becoming a global leader in renewable energy. The share of fossil fuels in China's installed generation capacity has now fallen to below half, down from 2/3 a decade ago. They are expected to increase use of renewables such as wind and hydroelectric. If we do not rejoin the Paris Climate Agreement and focus on renewables, there is a lot of risks domestically. There is a lot of monetary losses from climate change. By rolling back rules with net economic benefits, the Trump administration is taking away benefits from the American public. This is the amount in losses that are at risk from these rollbacks. Also, environmental hazards create political instability, which could affect our democracy. Oil prices are also more volatile. This is around when we got into the conflict with Iran. These prices have continued to go up since. With a reliance on oil, we're more subjected to these price increases. There is also a domestic health risk. More than 2 million children under the age of 18 live within 3 miles of an industrial polluter invited by the Trump administration to apply for a 2-year exemption or a free pass from complying with toxic air pollution limits. These are just some of the domestic risks that could happen if we continue on this path. There's also international risks from continuing. After leaving, rejoining, and then leaving again, the U.S. is showing polarization and weakness in our domestic politics. A growing number of states and allies view the U.S. as unstable and unpredictable. China could take the lead in renewable energies and become the dominant superpower, replacing the U.S. And a reliance on oil makes the U.S. more susceptible to economic troubles when the U.S. is engaged in conflict with OPEC members such as Iran. As the Secretary of State, I recommend the U.S. rejoin the Paris Climate Agreement. I also recommend we de-escalate the war with Iran and work towards negotiating a ceasefire. I also recommend we stop environmental policy rollbacks, we refund climate research, and we invest in renewable energies such as solar, wind, hydroelectric, and invest in other energy sources such as hydrogen and nuclear so that we are not so reliant on oil and coal. I also recommend to Congress to consider a new law preventing presidents from leaving international agreements in the future without Senate approval. Thank you for watching, and these are my sources.